He's a little weirdo, and Star Wars fans love little weirdos. Really?
That big ol' eye. Is
Like-
that what it normally is, Corellia?
Yeah.
Oh.
You've written it 5 times.
Well, it's so chaotic.
You just close your eyes and fly. What's up, everyone, and welcome to Last Week in Star Wars. I'm Alex.
I'm Molly.
Not a whole lot of Star Wars news to talk about this week. We're going to just go ahead and dive right into the news. I think last week we missed some Mandalorian and Grogu talk. Very minor announcements, and also something exciting that they're going to upgrade the Smuggler's Run ride. I don't know if they're completely erasing the Corellia mission, or if it's going to be like a 50-50 chance of what you get.
Is that what it normally is, Corellia?
Yeah.
Oh.
You've written it 5 times.
Well, it's so chaotic.
You just close your eyes and fly.
I am so nervous every time I go in there because you have a job to do, and I take that very seriously.
I think we have only flown it once. We're usually like stuck in the back engineering or something.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of like, I think engineer is the one where it's like not as hard. I mean, you're all just kind of pressing buttons, right?
I mean, engineering is how you get the coaxium. So arguably the most important job, says the person who feels like they're always sitting back there.
I need to be in the extra seat in the way back, just cheering everybody on. Like, I don't want to have to work on anything.
You're BB-8 with like ropes tied to the walls just so you don't fall over.
Yeah.
That's the job you want.
I don't know if they're gonna leave it up to chance, because that's kind of how
Star Tours.
Star Tours works, is like you don't really know what planet, location, trip you're gonna make. But I think if they're doing it to promote the movie, it'll just be kind of like a constant thing for at least like a month.
I agree. They're probably going to update it, let you just experience the Mando Grogu thing, especially if people are like, I just want to go to ride this specific ride. Mm-hmm. And then maybe eventually, like when the movie's out, they're like, okay, now it's a 50-50 shot. I guess Hondo is still going to be the person sending you on the mission. So this brings up timeline questions that don't really matter and that like I don't even care about. It's like, does this mean Mando and Grogu are on a mission during the time of the sequel trilogy? No, probably not.
You're still on the Falcon.
Uh-huh.
You're not with Mando and Grogu. I think they are like in another ship, and so like it doesn't have to mean Mando and Grogu have met Hondo.
Well, I'm just saying most of Batuu takes place like in the sequel trilogy era, but you know, they've been kind of getting rid of that, having characters from the New Republic era walk around. So I think this is, you know, Hondo was alive during this time, so he has the Falcon and he's sending you on a mission, and Mando and Grogu are there. Like,
yeah,
I don't think we have to think too hard about it.
It's a Disney theme park. The point of being there is to have fun and have a good time. I don't think we should worry too much about what's canon and which timeline we're in.
It's just, I know those questions are going to pop up because we're still always asked about like Kylo Ren's helmet and he wears that around on Batuu.
Yeah.
And it's like, let's just pretend he had several. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Also kind of a Parks and Mando and Grogu crossover is the BDX droids are going to make an appearance in the movie.
I am pretty excited about this because those little guys are so cute, and I think we've seen them. I know we've seen them in like one of the little golden books. I don't know if they've showed up in any comics or anything, but to see them and maybe Grogu interact would be really cute.
I'm curious if they made these things for Mando and Grogu and we're just kind of like debuting them in the park as well. I don't know which came first. Like, was this something that they wanted to make to have in the movie? Because they've done a BD droid in the Book of Boba Fett, but obviously it was digital. So are they just like trying to make a practical one for the movie? And they're like, we can put this in the parks too. It seemed like such an interesting experiment.
I want to say they made it for the parks first, because the way that they are designed, it's very much like these little guys have to be able to walk around on their own and like entertain crowds of people. And they may not have designed them that way had they made them for a film.
I'm not really expecting them to have much of a presence in the movie. Usually, I feel like when they're showing something off this early about a film, it's like, this is kind of inconsequential. It's like Constable Zuvio. Like, let's put a picture of Zuvio out because we know he's barely in it. It kind of reminds me of Favreau tweeting out the picture of the Camptono, which was just a fun, cool thing. And it has some decent screen time for what it is. But
Sure.
I feel like they're just like, this is going to be a fun little thing walking around in the background, or maybe it'll be featured.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone was there for that event and announcement and had been to the parks and seen them there, those people probably went crazy and were like, oh my God, I saw one of those. So like when he did the Camptono tweet, we knew what that was, but we hadn't seen it like pop up recently in anything special.
No, I can't recall the last time anyone talked about that seriously. Like, it was always like, oh, it's the ice cream maker thing.
Yeah.
So someone being like, look, we're going to put this in Star Wars and it's actually going to have a purpose and it's going to be the least convenient briefcase in the world, but we're going to do it.
And there's another little guy. His name was said, I think, at that panel. I don't remember what it was.
The Anzellans are returning from Navarro. They were also in season 3 of The Mandalorian. Not really surprised that they're coming back. If they're going back to Navarro, Favreau seems to really like the little guys. So
they're a great aspect that can offer up some comedic relief. And they're also like really handy. So there's multiple reasons to have them be a part of this. And at that panel, they showed off, there was an Anzellan like on top of one of the BDX droids. And they were like, we made, like the Disney Imagineers made this little guy. And he was fully animatronic, really, really cool looking. So I assume he might pop up in the parks too.
Actually, I think there he is right now.
No good, no good.
Remember, there he is. So these are the Anzellans, right? J.J. Abrams first came up with them for the Rise of Skywalker. We used them in the Mandalorian show. They're going to be in the new film, The Mandalorian and Grogu, and they specialize in droid repair. And this little guy's name is Otto. Yeah. Is that him? Yeah. So Otto's he's a little bit obstinate from what I heard.
Or he might be in the game or in the Smuggler's Run ride.
I didn't think about that being in the park as well. That would be a fun little treat.
Maybe instead of Hondo, they have just a little Anzellan up there.
That would be hilarious to have an Anzellan send you on a mission. I don't think they're going to get rid of Hondo just because that animatronic looked like a huge investment.
Sure.
Seems like it would have to really rework the whole introduction to the ride.
Or he could be, I mean, he's so small, he could be like set up, and they wouldn't put him in the cockpit because people would probably mess with him.
It'll be 4 Anzellans in a trench coat, and they're sending you on whatever mission. But Mando and Grogu is over a year away. Andor season 2 is much closer, and Tony Gilroy has been doing a ton of interviews promoting it. He spoke with like Entertainment Weekly and Collider, TV Line, I think Rotten Tomatoes,
IO9.
Yeah, Gizmodo, talking about Andor season 2, answering a lot of the same questions, but still kind of fun to see him promoting the show.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't want to give too much story away, obviously. I feel like the kinds of questions he's getting and like topics that are coming up in these interviews, it's very much like, we know fans are already super excited for season 2 and they're going to watch it no matter what. Throwing out all of the critically acclaimed quotes and stuff like that. He's really keeping it close to the chest as far as talking about story and like plot for season 2.
I'm really glad that even though I feel like it had been confirmed by that special look, he talked a lot about the Gorman massacre, and I'm glad that they're just like, yeah, that's what it is. It's happening.
That was something, I mean, they probably talked about that and they were like, fans know what this is. It's been talked about for a long time and like speculated on, like, is it going to show up in the show? So yeah, I'm not surprised that he just kind of came out and was like, yes, this is what we're doing. But then he said it's happening over 5 episodes.
He says it carries over 5 episodes, which, yeah, I'm wondering what that means. Because I don't think that means the massacre will last for 5 episodes.
I really hope not.
No.
That is not good television.
Oh, that'd be brutal. Like, you'd feel so beat down. No, I think it'll be like Arc 1, we get a little taste of what happens on Gorman. Like, we got it mentioned in season 1 a handful of times. Season 2, Arc 1, we can check in and show like the protests are building. In Arc 2, protests are building more, and now the Empire is kind of stepping in. And then Arc 3 maybe is everything that happens, the lead up to it, and then the third episode or maybe second episode will be the Gorman Massacre. I'm also curious how it's going to play into Mon Mothma's flight from the Senate. If that's going to be its own arc, or if that will be the conclusion of the Gorman Massacre arc. We know from Star Wars Rebels that she does her big speech denouncing the Emperor after the massacre, but it doesn't necessarily have to be immediately following the massacre.
Right. Yeah, I'll be interested to see how that all kind of plays out. But yeah, her Mon Mothma's story is very closely connected to the events on Gorman. Gorman? Is that the name of the planet?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Because they speak Gore.
Yeah. They're the Gorman people on the planet Gorman.
Gorman. Okay. But I like the idea of taking their time to really build up to the main event, the big like massacre. I hate keeping
we have to keep saying the word massacre, and it's like and it's so weird to be excited for a massacre, but
I'll just say
I am
the big event that happens on Gorman. I think taking multiple episodes over multiple arcs to tell the story of how this event builds and eventually happens is a good idea.
And I'm really glad that it's happening in a show like Andor, that it feels like it's going to fit within the tone, but also I trust Tony Gilroy to really give it the weight that it deserves. And this is something that has never been truly shown in Star Wars. It was in like RPG source materials. It was mentioned in a couple stories in Legends. It's always been a vague thing where we knew what happened in Legends, but it was never just like depicted in a story. And now to have it shown in a story in a show like Andor, where I think they're going to talk about how horrific it is, and it won't be like just this vague, horrible thing that happened. I think we're going to be like, yeah, that was truly horrific. And just the way that season 1 showed the horrors of fascism from the top of the Empire all the way down to like self-important security guards. I think that we're going to be talking about it in a very different way in a few months.
Yeah.
It's also just strange to me that like I'm going to be having discussions with my parents about the Gorman Massacre. Like they're going to know what that is. Tony also hopped on a live stream on Thursday. We haven't had a chance to watch the whole thing because we had to pause recording this to go watch it, and we popped back off. So we watched like half of it.
We're going to go back and watch the other stuff.
Yeah, we missed the first half, watched the second half. Tony seems great, just very genuine. Funnier than I expected him to be. I've only seen him speak a handful of times, but he was cracking a lot of fun jokes.
Yeah.
And wearing the Narkina 5 swim team shirt.
I didn't see that.
Yeah. I thought that was a great wardrobe call on his part that I just wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
He seemed very playful, more playful than I thought he would be.
Right. And pleasure to see Ash back in moderating Star Wars things. I was really excited to see her on this. I think the whole idea of doing this little stream is really cool, and I hope that they do more like this.
We did get the chance to pre-record a question to send in, which was fun and interesting. That was like a fast whirlwind, but
yeah, that was really cool.
Let's jump in to see what Star Wars Explained asked.
Hi, I'm Molly.
And I'm Alex.
And we're from the YouTube channel Star Wars Explained.
We are so excited for Andor Season 2. We loved Season 1, actually just finished a rewatch of it. Our question for you is, how do you think releasing 3 episodes at a time this season is going to affect how audiences connect with the show?
Great question.
I think that it's really cool for us. It's how we made the show. So for us, it makes sense. We really feel like we made 8 Star Wars films over the last 5.5 years. So we make them in these blocks of 3. So they're being presented to the audience in the sort of digestible frame that we make them. I feel really sorry for all the podcasters. We've talked about this before, because it's like now they gotta if it's gonna complicate some people's lives. But I'm assuming that if other people are like I am, and I watch I watch things as randomly as anybody else does. So, I mean, it offers the opportunity to watch any way you want. But if you want the movie and you want the whole block and you want to eat it all at once, it's there for you.
Yeah, Tony, I'm sweating about my coverage plans.
I know,
I gotta tell you.
Sorry.
But we love it. We love it.
We submitted like 3 questions and then they came back and picked one for us to actually record. So we did that, and our question wound up being how the 3 episode at a time release is going to affect how fans interact with the show. And Tony actually did like laugh and said, well, it's going to make things difficult for podcasters, which we've joked about how I've assumed he was saying that very sarcastically, but he actually did seem like, sorry.
Yeah, I'm glad he brought that up because it's true. Like, just reading interviews with him, you don't really get a lot of the feeling behind what he's saying. So we definitely were like, oh, he's just being sarcastic. Like, no one cares what podcasters have to go through to get their jobs done. But it did seem like he was legitimately like, I'm sorry if this makes anyone else's jobs harder, or like talking about the show being a podcaster. Like, it did seem like he was genuine about what he said.
Which I mostly thought was funny. Like, I want to be clear, we don't think that they should do the release schedule based on what podcasters have to go through. Like,
right.
That's stupid. But I think it's funny that he actually seems to be getting more and more into the Star Wars fandom. And like, I've talked about how when season 1 was airing, he saw a channel that was reacting to it and loved their reaction, and then reached out to them and was like, can I be on your show and like talk about Andor with you? And obviously they said yes. And I just like seeing Tony go from someone who was like so far removed from Star Wars to like writing Rogue One, and now like it's 10 years later almost, and he is hopping on podcasts and cracking jokes and wearing shirts.
Yeah.
Like it was just a lot of fun to watch him through that whole live stream answering nerdy Star Wars questions.
Right. It's so nice to see someone like Tony Gilroy really be so appreciative of fans and like the fandom in general, and want to kind of be more of a part of it and be more in conversation with fans. It's really great.
Are you ready to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, so you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week, it's easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. Choose from preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle, and can help you feel your best all day long with wholesome smoothies, breakfast, snacks, and more. Reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience that can't be beat. I've tried weeks worth of Factor meals, and they're perfect for fitting lunch into my busy schedule. I cook breakfast in the morning, and Molly and I cook dinner together in the evening, but finding time for a good lunch has always been a struggle for me. Factor is simple and quick to prepare in the microwave or oven, and the meals taste good. I usually choose their Protein Plus meals that come with chicken breasts or pork tenderloins or beef. They taste good, they're quick to make, and they definitely feel like a step above a standard microwavable meal. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/StarWars50off and use code StarWars50off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code StarWars50off at factormeals.com/StarWars50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box.
Moving on into last week in Canon, there were 2 stories that came out. We got the audio book Haunted Starlight, which was just an Audible exclusive, and we also got Legacy of Vader issue 2. I'll go ahead and run through Haunted Starlight, which that actually came out last week, but I didn't have time to listen to it all before we covered anything. So I liked the story a lot. Honestly, kind of wished that it were a book. Both Seeds of Starlight and Haunted Starlight together, I think, would have made a very interesting book that followed up on a lot of plot lines that we haven't revisited in a while.
Would it have worked having both of those stories in one book, or you're saying you wanted 2 separate books?
I think they could have done both stories together as like a YA book, or separated them to be a middle grade book. I was just surprised that we dug so deep into what was going on with the Drengir in these audiobooks that kind of just got announced and dropped out of nowhere. They didn't get as much fanfare as the books do. And I was like, this is kind of like some major story stuff where we find out that the great progenitor of the Dringir is still alive. And that's why the Dringir are waking back up around the galaxy. So the Jedi have to go down into the wreckage of Starlight Beacon at the bottom of the ocean. And like, that was just awesome to revisit Starlight Beacon. I thought was a very cool thing. So part of me was like, man, I connect more with books than I do just listening to things. So I was like, I think I would have loved to read this or read it in a comic or something, to have it a little visually depicted would have been cool.
I wonder if it might be, because where else had the Dringir been popping up before we got these stories?
They were in Temptation of the Force. They've popped up in the books just in the sense that the Jedi have noticed that they're waking back up. Okay. But they also noticed that they just seem to be fleeing the blight.
Yeah. It just seems to me like a lot of the Dringir story had been in the comic books.
It was, yes.
So I wonder if they were like, the book readers might not have read about the Dringir stuff as much, so maybe we just put these out as Audible originals, do them as audiobooks only.
I don't know. I have no idea like what the decision making is behind some of like where each story goes, but regardless, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a cool story. Also,
who are the main characters in these stories?
Tep Tep and Kildo are two major characters.
Okay,
they're from several middle grade books. Cam is a new Padawan character who I would say is like the main character of these. But Tep Tep was awesome. She is like very in tune with animals, and she basically helps barter a truce between the Jedi and the Dringir. There was a line I really loved where it says, Tep Tep finds it impossible to see monsters. And she's just really good at showing compassion to creatures that otherwise people are just like, they have no redeeming qualities. So I really liked her story in this. In comics, we got Legacy of Vader issue 2, and this had some big news in it. We found out that Watto, we don't necessarily know if Watto is alive, but we do find out that Darth Vader did not kill Watto, which was, there were some preview pages that were put out without context, and it showed Vader, it looked like he was attacking Watto.
We all thought that was what was happening. It's
Charles
funny.
Soule was just laughing and laughing at us.
Sure. I mean, it did build up a lot of excitement, I think, for the series. And it's funny that you say that we don't know if he's alive, because I think it was Discussing Film put out a tweet, and it was like the comic book pages from this issue, and it was like, turns out Watto isn't effing dead, or something like that. And I was like, well, he probably is now.
Someone trashed his shop. Like, it didn't look like things had gone well for him. Right. I mean, we knew that in episode 2.
But it wasn't Vader. According to Vinay, it wasn't Vader who killed him.
All we know is that Vader didn't kill Watto. He might be alive. He might be dead. We don't know.
A lot of Watto stands out there. I gotta say. It's strange. We've talked about this.
That someone in our Lego stream this past week asked, like, what's a Glup Shido that you don't get? And I was like, you know what? Kind of Watto. I mean, like, when we went to see The Phantom Menace on May 4th last year, he got, like, a lot of applause. And we looked at each other and we were like, really? Watto? Like, he's a slave owner.
Yeah, he's not really a good guy. And then, like, I guess in episode 2, you're meant to maybe feel, like, a little bit bad for him, but not really.
I've never really felt bad for him.
I've just seen, like, since this news has come out that he wasn't actually killed by Vader, I've seen, like, so many memes of him, like, floating around the internet. I'm like, wow, people really care a lot about Watto.
He's a little weirdo, and Star Wars fans love little weirdos.
I do love a Toydarian.
Toydarians are great. Love Toydarians, but Watto specifically, he owns slaves. He's not a good guy.
Yeah.
But Kylo Ren is on this journey learning about Vader's past, Anakin's past, which I do think it's interesting. Vinay seems to be telling him a lot of this stuff for the first time. Mm-hmm. It seems like no one taught young Ben Solo about his grandfather.
Yeah, I saw someone on Twitter talking about this, and they were like, why did no one tell young Ben Solo about Anakin eventually like being redeemed, going back to the light side?
That I think he knew. At least if we go back to like the Force Awakens novelization, which, you know, the novelizations are a little gray in the canon of it all, but he knew about that. But I'm surprised that he didn't know anything about his childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why wouldn't anyone teach him about who Anakin was?
Well, who would know those stories at this point?
I guess that's a fair point.
Gotcha.
Oh God, not the gotcha dancers.
Maybe Bail Organa. He might have known something. But yeah, he probably didn't have the whole story. I mean, Yoda could have... he and Obi-Wan didn't really seem too forthcoming with Luke. No. I'm just saying, somewhere along the line, failure to communicate. And I feel like Ben Solo, as a child knowing this, it would have been good for him.
Right. And I did think it was interesting in this issue that Vinay talks about all the files like that Palpatine had on Anakin throughout his life, which seems like, yeah, that makes sense. But I liked having that kind of like confirmed, and the idea of like Vinay going through all of this stuff and like studying it.
I think that they had to write that into the issue because one of my questions early on in issue 2, I was just like, how does Vinay know this? And then like next page, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So otherwise, yeah, no one would really know the story of how Anakin grew up and all this. So I'm glad that we know that somewhere there were specific files documenting some of these events.
It's on whatever the Wikipedia of, I guess it's just Star Wars Wikipedia in their universe.
Yeah, and Vinay has full access to it, which is great because he's been there for a long time and he needs something to read.
One of the frames I really liked is when Ben thought back to his own childhood and was like pretending that he had it just as bad as Anakin, and it was just like a bunch of happy memories of like everything that he's left behind.
Yeah.
I was just like, you little turd. He then finds out that Gardula the Hutt was another one of Anakin's slave owners, and he wants revenge, I guess, on someone. He wants to remove her from the story, so he heads off basically to kill her. I think it's interesting that I think Vinay warns her that he's coming. That, I don't know for sure he was talking to Gardula, but he called someone and was like, he's on his way and he seems mad.
Oh, maybe he was talking to the little guy.
Could be. So yeah, like, let's get to the little guy. He shows up and some little weirdo pulls Kylo Ren's lightsaber away from him and force pushes him against a wall.
Says that he's weak in the Force.
Yeah, it says Kylo is weak, which of course upsets him, but like that causes Kylo Ren to be captured by Gardula the Hutt. Who is this little weirdo?
I like that Gardula had some lines that, and she was kind of like, do you really think I wouldn't be prepared for like a Force user to come in here and try to get me?
Yeah, which I mean, I think that was great logic on her part.
Yes.
Be like, I know what happened to Jabba years ago, and I'm prepared now. I got this little buddy.
Yeah, who looks like Pokemon. He looks kind of like the rock Pokemon.
Geode a bit. Not Star Wars Geode, but Pokemon Geode.
Yeah. I was actually Googling images of that Pokemon and like all the iterations of it. And I was like, yeah, it kind of looks like that. But there's already been some back and forth throughout the fandom. I think he's a little rock man and he's like dry and hard. But you think he's squishy.
He looked squishy and wet to me. So that's like, you immediately were like, oh, cute. And I was like, really?
He's got big ol' eyes.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, he did not scream cute to me.
I just imagine, when I was reading the lines that it was saying, I was imagining it in my head as like the voice of a small baby.
Could be.
I don't know why.
Like, he looks like something... It's the opposite of Diego Luna being like, the texture of Yaba. I want to touch him. I'm like, I don't want to touch that thing.
Aww.
That, If he is like a rock, I would be able to handle that better. But to me, he looks like this squishy, like, just full. It's like bulbous all over the place. And I'm like, ugh.
Do you not like frogs? They're squishy and kind of slimy.
They're all right, but I'm like, frogs, toads, I don't know that I would call them cute.
I guess, I mean, even if he is slimy and squishy, he didn't choose that life. That's just who he is. I don't know why I'm standing by this little guy so hard. He might be a terrible, terrible creature.
I mean, so far I like him. I think he's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, just thought it was funny when you were like, hey, he's so cute. And I was
adorable.
like, oh, it's the Ant-Man thing. He's so ugly. I love him.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, anytime we get to see Kylo Ren kind of like put in his place a little bit is a good time.
Moving on to Last Week in Fandom, I wanted to give a shout out to Pod of Rebellion, the new Star Wars Rebels rewatch podcast that's got Tia Sakar, Taylor Gray, and Vanessa Marshall on it, hosted by John Lee Brody. So Hera, Ezra, and Sabine all talking about Rebels. They just released their first episode.
I love that they're doing this. I am very excited to listen to some of these episodes.
I listened to the first episode. It was less about like the show itself and more about their experiences, which I would expect.
Right.
But like talking about voice acting, how they were kind of a rarity and that they would all record together. I learned that I knew that they took video of them recording. I figured it was for behind the scenes purposes, but they also would give that to the animators. So they would use their expressions and their gestures and stuff. So
yeah,
there was some fun stuff to learn about that.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting and like have a lot of cool behind the scenes tidbits. Because we were talking about this the other day. Just like we don't really get a ton of behind the scenes or extras or anything on physical media anymore. So I do really like the idea of having a podcast where the actual voice actors can come in and talk about fun stuff that people may not know.
At the end, Vanessa Marshall gave a shout out to the Rogue Rebels family, who we've known Sal for a long time, but they were like some of the first Star Wars Rebels cosplayers. They did a whole family of cosplaying together, and I thought it was great that Vanessa gave them a shout out.
Yeah, that's nice to hear.
But moving into our last segment, Last Week in Questions, we took some from Patreon and some from YouTube. Did want to say, I forgot to mention last week that we did a Princess Mononoke watch-along that has been released on our Patreon. That was my first time watching it ever. I think it was my first Ghibli movie, actually.
Did you see that since doing that, it came out, or is coming back out in theaters and IMAX?
Yeah, 4K IMAX. I was like, of course.
Of course.
But I did like it quite a bit. And this week, right now, we just put out a Love is Blind discussion for our Beyond the Stars podcast.
Yay!
So that's a bonus podcast that we did with our friends Jill and Sean, just to yell about the latest episode or the latest season of Love is Blind.
Yeah, I don't know how much crossover there is with our viewers and people who watch Love is Blind, but it's something that we have had a lot of fun watching and talking about.
Definitely kind of I don't feel guilty watching it, but like a guilty pleasure, just reality TV.
It's trash TV.
Trash TV, yeah.
And we love it.
But our first question comes from Bill Rudd, who asks, what are the odds that we hear the name Sheev in Season 2 of Andor?
I hope not.
I think like close to zero.
Close to zero.
I would be shocked if they said Palpatine's first name.
I mean, was he even called that after he became the Emperor?
Yeah, maybe he tried to wipe that name away. He's like, I never liked Sheev.
Yeah, I don't go by that name anymore.
So I think we will hear the name Palpatine. I think we heard that once or twice in Season 1. But if Wolf Yularen drops a Sheev, I'll be shocked.
Maybe speaking in a derogatory like way or terms that way, we might hear it. But
yeah, maybe Saw Gerrera will drop a hard Sheev.
A hard Sheev.
But I feel like most people don't know that that's Palpatine's first name, especially like the wider audience that just watches the live action shows.
Yeah.
So then you fall into this whole like, wait, what did they say? That's his name? Like it would bring up all the discussions that happened, I think, when the book Tarkin first dropped that bit of knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I see them only referring to him as the Emperor, Emperor Palpatine, Senator Palpatine.
maybe a Darth Sidious if there's someone in the know, but
Yeah.
probably not. They seem to be staying away from a lot of the Force, Jedi, Sith stuff.
Yeah.
Taco Bowler asks, what are the chances of Leia being in Andor?
I don't think she'll be in it. I don't want to see another deepfake character in this.
I think that there's a chance that like we could do younger Leia, but I am not expecting it. But I agree, like Tarkin is already a possibility, and the deepfake stuff is just kind of exhausting at this point.
Tarkin, because of his history with the Gorman massacre, I could see getting a line, just like voice work for Tarkin, or maybe just like a shot of him from behind, not really showing any face. But bringing in characters and having to use full CGI, full deepfake technology, you have characters like Stellan Skarsgård and Forrest Whitaker and Genevieve O'Reilly giving these amazing performances. I don't want to see like a deepfake person in the midst of all of that.
I'm kind of expecting that Tarkin's going to be in it.
Maybe just a hologram?
I don't know. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he showed up fully just as he was in Rogue One.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not like fully expecting it, but I'm like preparing for it. So much more has come out about the deepfake technology, and I like it less and less, so I'm not rooting for it, but I won't be surprised. Leia, I feel the same way about her as I do like Darth Vader. I don't think Darth Vader is going to show up in season 2. I don't think he should. Same with Leia. Like, they both pop up at the very end.
Yeah.
To lead us into A New Hope.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's more fitting. I think that's a more impactful way to use them than for them to show up in Andor.
Right.
Estelle Getty Jr. asks what Vader would do if he ever successfully resurrected Padme. I think this is coming because we talked about the Vader's castle and its original purpose and everything, and he does try to resurrect her at least twice.
That is an interesting question, because would he then give up everything about his life as Vader and working with Palpatine, or would he continue to try to convince zombie Padme that what they're doing is good?
I, first of all, don't think that what he wants is really possible. I mean, he straight up tries in the Darth Vader comics, reaches at least a vision of her, and she denies him. Like, I think that at the end of Revenge of the Sith, she's like, you're going down a path I can't follow. I don't want to be around you anymore.
So much so that I'm dying.
Yeah, so I don't think that it's really a possibility. I also don't think that Vader has thought that far ahead. Like,
sure.
He's just, what's the Joker say? He's a dog chasing a car. And if he ever got a hold of a tire, like, he doesn't know what he'd do with it.
Right. Yeah, I like thinking of it that way, because you're right. Like, I don't even think Vader, because Vader as a character is not very hopeful. So does he actually think any of this is going to work?
I think he does. And I think he probably assumes that Padme will forgive him or something. And she is an understanding person, but not that understanding.
Right. Yeah. And she would probably be appalled at the idea of him using all this like dark side Sith stuff to resurrect her.
So yeah, like, I just don't think he even has a plan, that he's just gonna work and try hard. And I think in his mind, if he can just resurrect Padme, when I lost Padme, that's when everything fell apart.
Yeah, and that's not true.
Right. It's like,
he gave it all up.
Yeah, you did this.
He gave it all up.
Yeah. But that's it for last week in canon. Pippin wanted to say hi right at the end. For next week, we have a little preview. We're going to get some new Young Jedi Adventures episodes next week.
Yay!
And the High Republic Adventures issue 16.
Nice.
So we'll be covering those stories next week, along with any news that comes out, answering more questions. But if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel.
Follow us on Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.
And consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.